This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
The number one selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Keep Watch Pass on the It's Not That Bad podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. When you think about some of the epic movies from the 80s and 90s, one name stands above all, or at least most. Kevin Costner, because there are a ton of major name films that came out that really helped define what an epic theater cinema experience was. And we're going to go through his filmography, but I'm not going to do it alone. Because here on the show, Carson Elcome is back to go through this filmography. Carson, how you doing, man?
I am living the dream. We're here talking about movies, start to the week. I honestly don't know if there's a better way to kick off a week than being on the It's Not That Bad channel.
Right? Exactly. This is the way you want to start your week, people. Keep Watch Pass, and then the rest of the week is just, it's butter. It's just butter. But when it comes to Kevin Costner films, like, were you stoked for this topic?
I was honestly hyped because I know I threw out a name and you're like, let's do that, and then added one on being Kevin Costner. And I was like, perfect. Like, brilliant, like, duo. I am so down for it. And I couldn't be more ecstatic for this one because I think I have a few on here that maybe you're not even going to inherently think of.
You know what? It's funny, too, because I didn't realize just how deep his filmography runs.
Huge, man.
And that's the thing. Like, you think of these actors and instantly a bunch of movies will come up to mind. And you're like, yeah, of course, those movies are going to dig deep. Dear listeners, dig deep into those filmographies because there are gems in there to find, whether you have seen them or not. Expand your film watching horizons because there's a lot out there that these actors have done where you're like, I can't believe I didn't even know this film existed. That's why I love watching movies. That's why I love doing this podcast, because I get to experience more of those films. But here's what we're going to do for this episode. We're going to go through that filmography of one, Mr. Kevin Costner, and pick three each: a keep, a watch, and a pass. The keep is one that we hold in absolute high regard. The watch is one that, much like Tatanka, we would watch it anyways. And the pass is one that, Kevin Costner related or not, we would pass on, not necessarily because of Kevin Costner. There are reasons why we pass on films. Those reasons are our own. And we will get to those reasons a little bit later. But Carson, I'm going to start with you. Your keep Kevin Costner film.
All right. So I don't know if this is really known for being a Kevin Costner film per se. I think it is because I know what he's done in this, but that is 2019's The Art of Racing in the Rain. Jason, are you familiar whatsoever?
I have never heard of this.
No,
Not
really?
once.
I mean, based on the book? Do you know? Okay, just let me lay the ground level here. Do you know anything about this movie or book?
This is completely new territory for me, and I am stoked because I know how much of a racing fan you are. Fill us in.
So I don't know if you know where this is going, but this movie, obviously released in 2019, stars Kevin Costner, Milo Ventimiglia, and Amanda Seyfried as the main three people in this movie. And it's about a guy named Denny Swift, who is an aspiring Formula One driver who is really intricate with his driving ability, understands the technique he needs, and essentially he's trying to also navigate everyday life. But that sounds pretty, like that could be a movie. But now what if I told you the main character of this movie is actually Kevin Costner, who plays a dog named Enzo, aka named after Enzo Ferrari, the team that Denny wants to drive for one day. And it's about how Kevin Costner as the dog interprets the life of the family he's a part of, and going from being a dog to the single guy to being the dog of a family of three and a young daughter of Milo and Amanda Seyfried's. And it's just such a beautiful movie. And every time I watch it, I associate Kevin Costner's voice with the dog Enzo so much, where I'm like, it's calm, it's concise, it's exactly what I want from a dog movie. But also, as you said before, I'm a huge racing guy. So the combination of me being a big dog person and a big racing person just blends really nicely into an incredibly emotional but resilient story about a man and his dog who have been obsessed with motorsport since they kind of came into contact. And that's why it's such a beautiful piece for me personally.
I have never in the history of ever actually heard of this film or of the 2008 book that it's based on. I'm so intrigued. I am absolutely intrigued with this. This is cool. This is very, yeah.
It's not a huge, like, I think it's got 40 something percent on Rotten Tomatoes, which I'm going to be honest with you, I think is criminal. I don't know how you could watch this movie and give it that, especially how much we base that rating system on. It's not that bad. But if there's a movie one night that you and the wife are sitting there and you need something to watch, I would significantly recommend this movie because it tugs on the heartstrings, man. It really does. And if you're a dog family or an animal family, it'll hit even the harder.
I mean, just taking a look at the poster of the film with a golden retriever, nose into the air out of a top down convertible. Like, yeah, I can get behind this. I can get behind this. Absolutely. Now I have to go and find it. All right. I'm going to go, as you like to say, I'm going to go basic bitch for my pick for keep on this one. But if I'm going to basic bitch this, I'm going to basic bitch this in the most badass way possible. I'm talking about maybe the best film about the Capone era ever. I'm going with The Untouchables
Hell yeah.
of this. Because as Elliot Ness, Kevin Costner was killing it. Sean Connery is the proper level of cranky as all hell for this. Sean Connery is best when he's cranky, and I like that. But I think this is the thing where, like, this film hit on so many different levels. You had great casting. You had a good backstory for this. You had the Capone era being told from the police story, so it didn't necessarily glorify the gangster, like, actions of Capone. Like, it's a great film. Like, everyone, even if you've never watched this film, you know that scene during the shootout with the carriage going down the stairwell. Like, that is one of those moments in cinematic history that stands out as a scene that goes beyond the film itself. I mean, I could watch this film any day of the week and be quite happy because the story holds. A, it's a true story, but B, the way that everyone came together for this one. Untouchables is one of those literally untouchable films when it comes to critics.
And Brian De Palma can do so very little wrong. It's brilliant. And this was the one that was juggling to be my keep as well. And I think the big thing that kept it from being my keep for me is just because I watched it for the first time this year during the summer. I absolutely adored it. Incredible film, but I personally had more lineage with The Art of Racing in the Rain. But my goodness, do I dare say that even though I picked something different, this could be the best acting job that Kevin Costner has done in his career. And it wouldn't be hard to really match.
I mean, that would be a fascinating keep, watch, pass as movies directed by Brian De Palma. Because when you think about it, right?
No, that'd be great.
You have some absolutely like undeniable, amazing films like the first Mission Impossible. Like, I know there'll be someone who sit there and say, really, you're going to mention The Bonfire of the Vanities? But it's out there. Wise Guys is out there. Freaking Scarface is out there.
Carrie as well. Like these are some big classics of just cinema in general.
There are some deep dives though, because if you go back to 1974, there is a film called Phantom of the Paradise, and that is Brian De Palma directing a Way Out There musical. Yeah, and you have to see this to believe it.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
For my watch film, I'm going to go with a film that I didn't think was going to be my watch film because it doesn't necessarily fit in my wheelhouse because I'm not the biggest fan of, for lack of a better term, sweeping epics. But Dances with Wolves really does stand not just the test of time, but it actually justifies the runtime of the film because it's a long film. Don't get me wrong, but I think this one actually is deservedly so.
And if I'm correct on this, you can quote me if I'm wrong, you also chose this movie for a keep or a watch when we did the modern Western episodes.
Absolutely,
of this,
yes.
a few months back.
I do believe so. Dances with Wolves is one of those films where, first of all, you've got Kevin Costner in the director's chair as well. So kudos to him on that one. But I mean, the connection between Kevin Costner and Graham Greene. Graham Greene really might be the shining star of the film, but that's not to take away from what Kevin Costner brought to it. And I think the fact that you have actors like Graham Greene who are able to shine above your main stars shows almost a graciousness in what Kevin Costner did as a director. Like, you have to give credit where credit is due. I think this film really should be, if it's not already, in the movie, I don't want to say the movie Hall of Fame, but in the Congressional Hall of Records or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm brain
actually
farting on what it's called, but I'm like, it's got to be there.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's actually called. So, dear listeners, please feel free to correct me on this one in the, at our social media at Not That Badcast. But you know what I'm talking about when I say that it's actually, when it's preserved by Congress, because it is one of those. I don't want to say like pinnacles of Americana cinema, but I'm going to say it's a pinnacle of Americana cinema in probably all the best ways.
It's so beautiful too, and I think that's what gets me every time. And I think I mentioned this on our other episode too, but this was a huge movie for my grandfather actually, and he was a huge Western guy. Obviously, grew up with John Wayne and that era too. And this was a more modern, I'll say, Western that he really, really related to. And watching it nowadays, I think the last time I watched it was late 2023, and it's, to me, and I feel like you'd feel this way too, it's just underrated. It is a criminally underrated Western that I don't understand how it doesn't get the attention it deserves even to this day.
I mean, I don't know how much you could say it's underrated because it actually did win Best Picture at the 1991 Oscars and Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Cinematography.
I guess underrated today. Like, let me rephrase that. You're absolutely right. How many people though today do you hear talk about this movie in terms of some of the best Westerns?
Well, I mean, and I need to, correct myself here. It was actually selected for the National Film Registry in 2007. So see, I can Google on the fly. You called it. I can Google on the fly. But the thing is, when you think of Kevin Costner films, this might not actually be the first film that comes to mind, and yet it might be his most critically successful film. I don't want to say overall successful, but definitely his most critically successful film that he ever did. And he's put out some big movies. Some have been fantastic, some maybe not so much. Well, we'll get to those a little bit later. But Carson, over to you. Your watch film from Kevin Costner's filmography.
So I went for a very modern approach, given the first two movies we've talked about, or the first, I guess, three, including yours. But I went for something that I don't know if many of you listening have seen this, because it was a limited theatrical release, especially across Canada, depending where you're listening from. But this was a movie that I really appreciated, and that is his director, producer, and starring role for Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1 of 3. And I don't know, Jason, if you've seen this film or known much about it. This was what he took off doing Yellowstone for, which is obviously an insanely popular TV show right now, because this was a big passion project. And I'm not going to lie, critics did not love this movie. I think it's averaging around a 55-ish% on Rotten Tomatoes. But Horizon and American Saga is not only a really incredible dive into 1800s America in the West specifically, but it's an incredible character piece and kind of what I like to describe as Red Dead Redemption 2, the game, in terms of a movie. You have multiple people that you're continuously growing a story a part of, although I will say it's a 3-hour runtime, so it's very, very, I might not say tough, but it can be strenuous for people to watch. It's a really emotional and connective, raw state to the 1800s, early 1900s life in America, in the Old West. And not only do I think he does it exceptionally well, I think a lot of the critical points of it miss what it was trying to convey, as opposed to what maybe the story will grow to. Because obviously there's 3 chapters of this movie. He's only done chapter 1 so far in release, and chapter 2 has been pushed to, I think, February or March theatrically. But it's just truly, in my opinion, the rawest version you can find of an American Western. And I think this will be a huge movie in about 10, 15 years that is way more understood then than it is now for what it does.
Yeah, and I think the fact that this was actually in development, heck, back in 1988, and we're only now just getting to this film, that just goes to show the heart and passion that Kevin Costner is putting into this film. So, I mean, like, critics be damned. Like, if it comes out anything close to what Kevin Costner envisioned back then, and then releasing now, then you have to give all the flowers because he stuck to it no matter what it took.
No, you're right on it. And it reminds me in a similar but different way as Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis.
Oh, we're going to talk about that film?
I'm going to mention it because I went and saw it in theaters and could appreciate it for what it was while understanding that maybe this wasn't the time for it. And I think that's something we don't give movies enough credit for as an art form, is that, hey, maybe this is a story being told now, but maybe in about 10, 15, 20 years, the real reason behind its message will be understood more. And I think that's okay. If you're ahead of your time, that's always known as a positive thing. But for some reason in the film landscape, being ahead of your time is hit with a 45% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I get it being so infatuated with media standpoint and getting everything quickly. But this is a true movie that I think will really begin to resonate with not only film buffs, but people that want a different way of storytelling in the next 2 decades.
I mean, knowing what Dances with Wolves did, this Horizon series makes sense for Costner. I don't know if anyone will say Megalopolis actually makes sense, but that's for another episode.
No, exactly right.
All right. So now we get to our past film and recognize that we're not dissing on Kevin Costner in these films per se. We're just passing on the film as something that we wouldn't necessarily choose to watch. So Carson, your past film.
I'm going to give you a shot here right off the bat. Do you think you could guess what my past film is for this?
I mean, I might take a shot in that it's Waterworld.
Okay, so that's hilarious you said that, because that was my number 2 to this movie right here. And I know my answer will be unpopular. I'll give you one more shot.
I'm going to guess, and just toss this out there. I'm going to guess maybe The Postman.
It is not The Postman.
Okay.
This is a movie that I actually enjoy and I don't have a lot of issues with, but in particular, I feel bad for Kevin Costner. So I know that's not inherently the premise of Keep Watch Pass, but it's kind of how I took an interpretation on it.
It's still fair.
And this movie is none other than a 2013 release. Can you get it off of that?
Oh, then it's Man of Steel.
It is Man of Steel, which I personally hurt myself having this as my past film, because I am in the minority that thinks Man of Steel is actually a pretty solid Superman movie outside of some of the CGI and some of the later storytelling. My issue in particular with Kevin Costner's role in this is not remotely his acting. I love Kevin Costner as an actor. I think he's underrated. I don't think he gets talked about enough, and I don't think he gets enough recognition as he deserves. But there's some scenes in this movie that I really struggle that Kevin Costner had to do. And Jason's going to be the only one that can see this right now. But I just think of the movie, the scene where he dies in Man of Steel and Henry Cavill is running towards him and there's just a tornado, and instead he's just like puts his hand up to stop him and he just gets eaten by a tornado. And I get that you have to make a background and a standpoint for Cal and Clark Kent to really base the movie off of. But I think so many of Kevin Costner's scenes are so thrown away, even though you have this incredible actor, incredibly prominent person in film, that you just really threw a lot of it away in some of the delivery and writing of how he should have done it. Because like I said, I don't hate Man of Steel as a movie. I just think Kevin Costner deserved better.
I can see that because, I mean, people will sit there and say Man of Steel wasn't bad. People will say it was the beginning of the end for DC, and that was early on. Man of Steel is going to draw some very, very strong opinions that I know we've talked about. We've talked about Batman versus Superman on this show. We've talked about the original Joss Whedon cut of Justice League on this film. Trust me, the DCEU has its day on this show a few times. But you're right, Kevin Costner's not bad in this. I think he was a very good Pa Kent. It's one of those things where he did well. Cavill is a great Superman. There's so many good elements about Man of Steel, and yet it didn't stick the landing. And it unfortunately set the tone for a DCEU that couldn't even finish its original plan.
And I think that's one of the bigger issues I have with it, is that it was such a pinnacle turning point for DC that it just maybe wasn't the pinnacle of the series that they should have resonated and started with, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. All right, for my pass, I'm going to go with, and I may surprise you on this one, because I'm going with a sports film. I'm going with Tin Cup.
Really?
Yeah.
Wild. That was not what I was expecting from you at all.
And I think the thing is, it's just so by the numbers predictable that it does nothing. Like, really, the only good scene for me in this film is when he's just not giving up on that green, and he's just like literally all out of the to give, trying to get over and onto the green. That is the only scene worth watching in this film. I will say that it's actually a very good Cheech Marin film, but otherwise it's just, it's forgettable is what it is.
Are you forgetting about my boy Don Johnson over here?
No, I already forgot about your boy Don Johnson. That's how forgettable it was.
No, I honestly do remember. It's probably been about 4 or 5 years since I've seen it. And I feel like, especially considering it being Kevin Costner, who has Draft Day?
Yeah.
And Field of Dreams, where it's like, it's tough to rival. But I can appreciate you choosing this. I'm just surprised that this is the route you went.
Yeah, I mean, had I said Field of Dreams, people would have rioted with their headphones right now, because like, how dare you besmirch the name of Field? No, I didn't besmirch the name of Field of Dreams. It's okay. I'm just ripping on Tin Cup, but only because it just didn't move the needle enough for me as, for lack of a better term, a rom-com, which is kind of what it was supposed to be, but it just wasn't.
No, I could appreciate that. And the moment you said sports film, I feel like many of us, including the listeners, were instantly like one of Field of Dreams or Draft Day. So instantly I was like, wait a minute, is he really going to take this stance as someone in sports and then someone who does a lot of that background? But then when you said it, I was like, nope, that I'll give it to him. That makes sense.
Yeah, of all the sports films that Kevin Costner has done, it's definitely the worst sports film that he's done. There's no question about that. But yeah, no, it's just does not move the dial for me. Even American Flyers, would have been a better pick than Tin Cup for me. That's Tin Cup does nothing.
No, and that's completely reasonable. Where it's one of those movies that, not me saying that everything has to exist to be some profound ideological or different take on whatever, but it's definitely one of those movies where I'm like, this exists to capitalize on the Kevin Costner sports bravado.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? That's okay. Actors are allowed to take a paycheck, and that's okay.
No, exactly. And I think that's something we forget too, is, you know what? I think I would argue that 95% of the people listening to the show, at least, if there was a financially welcoming opportunity that came to them, that would definitely take it. And I think just because celebrities do that doesn't mean that they don't inherently have the same right.
Exactly. Sometimes someone got to get paid. All right, Carson, please remind our listeners what your keep, watch, and pass picks are for films starring Kevin Costner.
All right, so for my keep film, I went with 2019's The Art of Racing in the Rain. Beautiful film. For my watch, I went with 2024's Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1. And for my pass, I went with the controversial Man of Steel from 2013.
All right, and for me, my keep is The Untouchables, my watch is Dances with Wolves, and my pass is Tin Cup. Carson, thank you so much for this. And dear listeners, you guys know the drill. If there is a topic that you want us to cover on Keep, Watch, Pass, or a movie you want us to cover on It's Not That Bad, hit us up on social media at Not That Badcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out all of our shows, including There Can Only Be One, Spin, Shuffle, Skip, and grading on a curve. Until next time, he's Carson. I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is Keep Watch Pass on the It's Not That Bad podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.